Hey, good morning. Welcome to C-Mill Guitar, home of your six-string solution. I'm Corey Miller, and I will be hosting this episode as always. Today we're going to talk about the major scale, how a major scale is made, how you can use it musically speaking. We're going to try and clear up some of the things that are near and dear to my heart about music theory, okay? We're going to talk about intervals again, which is just the distance from one note to another. All right, and we are going to talk about the 7 note names that make up music in general, as well as your major scale formula. And we're also going to be talking about major thirds, all right? So stay tuned. We're coming at you live. All right, today we're going to talk about the 7 note names that make up a major scale, okay? And those would be the first 7 letters of the alphabet. So we're going to start with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And those make up the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes of the major scale. Now there's an 8th note that comes, that's the octave of the A note, okay? And with that note being the octave, it's number 8 in the sequence. So octave, like octopus. All right. We can also call that note 1 again. If we're going to keep counting our scale degrees, it's easier to start over at 1, okay? So now that we know about that, let's get started on how to build a major scale. We are actually going to start on the C note, and we are going to play the C major scale from C to shining C on one string. That would be on the 5th string here on the 3rd fret. So let's take a look at how that works, all right? We're going to be doing a series of intervals, and that's the distance between the notes, as we said. So we're going to be doing some whole steps, okay? That's 1, 2 frets up from your whatever note you're on, all right? We're going to be doing some half steps, which is just 1 fret up or towards the bridge of your guitar from whatever note you're on, all right? So here's how this goes. So here's your C note, 3rd fret of the A string or the 5th string, all right? We're going to go up a whole step, 2 frets. There's our D note, okay? And keeping with our theme, we're just moving through the alphabet, all right? Now we're going to go up another whole step to an E note. That's on your 7th fret. Now here's where it changes a little bit. Now we have a half step, so we're just going to go up 1 fret here to the F note, all right? Now we're going to have 3 whole steps in a row, okay? So we're going to go up a whole step here to the 10th fret, up a whole step here to the 12th fret. That's our A note. Another whole step up to the 14th fret. That's our B note. And now up a half step to our 15th fret. So that's the octave of the C note, okay? That's the next C. We can call that an octave. We know it's our octave, but we're going to start again at 1 since we're numbering each of these 7 scale degrees. It's easier to keep track of it that way. If we notice our C major scale between the E and the F note and the B and the C note, there's a half a step, okay? Now let's look at that. So here's our C, D, there's our E note on the 7th fret of the A string, all right? There's our F. That's only a half a step away. Now if we do this again, we go all the way up to the B note on the 14th fret and go to the C. There's another half step. And that's a good thing to memorize, the fact that there's a half step naturally occurring. That means no sharps or flats. Naturally occurring from between an E note and an F note and between a B note and a C note. That's going to become important later when we look at creating other scales, the G major scale in particular in this lesson. Notice now when you get to the 6th degree here, which is, here's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our 6th degree, that is the A, okay? Now that is what's called the relative minor, but we will talk more about that later, okay? All that means is it's the minor scale that's related to this major scale, which means it shares the same key signature. It just starts on a different note. In this case, there are no sharps and flats in the key of C, all right? So now let's talk about the intervals again. in our major scale formula. And we're going to look at a different scale. We're going to build a G major scale starting on the 6th string, okay, on the 3rd fret. So let's do this. Let's talk about this. Here's our G note, okay? Now we know that we need a whole step, so we're going to go up 2 frets to the 5th fret. There's our first whole step. Now we know we need another whole step. Here we go. Up 2 frets. All right, that's looking similar to our C scale so far. There's our B note on the 7th fret of the E string. Now we need our half step. Well, we're going to go up to the 8th fret on the C here. Okay, that works. All right, now we're going to go up to, we need 3 whole steps in a row, right? So we're going to go from the 8th fret from the C to the 10th fret. There's our D note. Okay, there's a whole step. Now from our D to our E, that's a whole step. So if we go up, we get from our E to our F. We already know that that's a half step, but we need a whole step, okay? So what do? So we go 1 more fret up to an F sharp. Remember, sharps go up, flats go down, okay? So we're going to go from this 12th fret from this E up 2 more frets to an F sharp. Well, what does that do? Well, look at this. It gives us our half step we need to go from our F sharp on the 14th fret to our G and finish out that major scale, all right? So now let's take a look at the G major scale on across the fretboard, all right? And we're going to start in the same position we were at. We're going to start with our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, or the 6th string, okay? And we're going to do what's called standard position G major scale, all right? That means that we are doing a G major scale within 4 frets, okay, within a 4 fret distance. You may remember, we may have spoken about the 1 finger per fret rule. We've got 4 fingers we're using on our left hand, okay? So in this instance, we are starting from the 2nd fret. We're in 2nd position, okay? So 1st finger on the 2nd fret, 2nd finger on the 3rd fret, 3rd finger covers the 4th fret, 4th finger covers the 5th fret, all right? So when we get to this G major scale, you're going to see that we are going to start with our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, all right? So let's take a look at how that scale works. So let's check out this G major scale in standard position. We're going to start that out with our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, the 6th string. We're going to use finger numbers here, all right? So we're going to do our 2nd finger, 4th finger, then we're going to move to our A string and we're going to go 1st finger, 2nd finger, 4th finger. Now we're going to move to our D string and do the 1st finger, 3rd finger, 4th finger. Now we're going to do that same pattern on the G string, okay? 1st finger, 3rd finger, 4th finger, all right? Now we're going to move up to the B string and we're going to put our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret, all right? And then 4th finger on the 5th fret, 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the E string, and then the 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the E string, all right? That finishes out our G major scale, okay? And all together it sounds like this. So here's I'm going to go through the scale degrees as I do this scale, okay? So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now it's a 2-octave scale, okay? So here's our 2nd octave. We're going to start again at 1 instead of 8 with our G note here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or back to 1 again. There's our ending G. All right, now that we've got that figured out and solved all the world's problems here with the major scale, let's take a look at one of the intervals that we're going to use quite a bit in the major scale, okay? And that would be the major third. All right, since this is majoring in the majors today, we are talking about our major scale, and we are going to talk about a major third. Now, the third note of a chord, okay, a triad, if you will. A triad is a chord, basic chord, most basic one, made up of 3 notes. And those 3 notes would be the root of the scale, okay, that's the 1st degree. The third of the scale, that's the 3rd degree, which sometimes you might get from your mom if you don't clean your room or don't show up on time, you know, for curfew or whatever you may or may not have. Anyway, with that said, we're going to take a look at the third degree of the scale, okay? And then the fifth degree of the scale. Those are the ones that make up a triad. So let's take a look at the major third going across two strings, okay? We're going to start by taking a look at the first few notes of our G major scale in standard position that we just played. So if you remember our G major scale in standard position, we're going to start with our second finger on the third fret of the sixth string, all right, on that G note, okay? Now if we count these scale degrees, we're going to do this, okay? 1, 2, 3. You see that? Now we're on the third, okay? 1, 2, 3. Now that's the third degree, okay? Now if you look at that interval, if we skip the second and just go right from the root to the third, you can see that shape developing. Now if you know your G chord, look at this. There's your major third right there. Okay, the cool thing about that is we can take that same shape and know that it's a major third and move it around, okay? So if we go from here down to the third fret of the fifth string and the second fret of the fourth string, there's a major third there too. Isn't that cool? You can see these shapes developing, okay? There's the fourth string and the second string. Now the thing that kind of throws it off a little bit is our G and B strings here, okay? So those are actually a major third in and of themselves. So those are going to be played on the same fret together. That's a major third there, okay? So those would both be played on the third fret. I know it kind of throws us off. It throws a wrench into the works here a little bit. But then when we get back to the third fret of the B string and then the second fret of the high E string, you can see that that shape reappears, okay? The shape that we're familiar with our major third. Now all that's going to come in really handy as we progress through these lessons on theory, okay? So what's happening now is we are just kind of naming scale degrees. We just went through the major third across the strings from one string to another on the adjacent strings, if you want to use that word and impress your friends. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at what that looks like on one string. What does a major third interval look like with both notes on the same string? All right, we're going to go back to our G major scale, okay? And we're going to play our notes on one string, okay? So we're going to start here on the third fret of the low E string, okay? There's our G note, there's 1. We're going to go up that whole step, there's our 2. We're going to go up another whole step, there's our 3, okay? That's the major third, okay? Major scale, major third, that's how that goes, okay? So now if we do this, if we play our root here on the third fret of the sixth string, we skip this second note here, we skip that A, and go right to the B, here's what it looks like. You can see those two whole steps here. I don't know how well you can see that here. Let's see if we can get a better shot of that. So here's what it looks like. Here's your major third, okay? So we're skipping the second and going right to the third. See that? So 3 frets up, 3 frets beyond where your first finger is, okay? Now the cool thing about that is that distance is the same on all the strings, okay? So when it comes to your major third on one string, that pattern resides on all the strings. Nothing changes. So when we get to our G and B strings, which we know when they're played together are a major third interval, okay? That's the distance between those two notes. It doesn't matter because we're playing that distance on one string, just up the fretboard. I hope this exploration into music theory has been helpful for you. I know it's fairly basic. Some of you probably already know these things. But stick with me. I'm going to add to all of this and try and get you a better understanding of music in general, okay? Please, if you have any questions, make sure you comment below. Squash the like button. That's always helpful. And if you want to email me, if you have any suggestions or any topics you'd like me to cover, you can get a hold of me on cmillguitar@gmail.com. All right. Thank you, fine people of Earth, and we will see you next Wednesday.